This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. So, I sold my Fender Tone Master Pro, and I wanted to do like a little bit of a video talking about sort of in general what the motivation was behind buying that product in the first place. Maybe use some other examples from the past that I've done this similar sort of thing before. I'm not even wearing the microphone. And where the results have been maybe a little bit different, and you know, try and talk about bias and all of these sorts of things about whether whatever it was fair or whether I had sort of an ulterior motive. So, right, in the history of this channel, so basically when I started doing more YouTube videos in earnest,
it was around the time of the Strymon Iridium launch. And the reason that I bought that Strymon Iridium was because as a YouTube viewer, I went on YouTube and I saw this Strymon Iridium launch, and there'd be like the odd really, really positive review, or there'd be the odd sort of really obvious kind of marketing PR stuff from the company. And basically this is a thing that is now, of course, common across the whole gear world. Now, obviously, you notice this sort of thing where the initial launch of a product, there's quite a lot of buzz around it, where lots of people will have been sent a piece of gear for free. And I'm involved in that sometimes with other bits and pieces of gear, of course, like the Line 6 HX1 recently, or the IK Multimedia Tone X, you know, bits and pieces. I do get involved in this. My hands aren't entirely clean. But the idea is that essentially you could buy a piece of gear, and instead of being clouded by the idea that you want to continue working with that company in the future, or you don't want to, you know, put anyone's nose out of joint, all these sorts of things.
Oh, I should say as well, Fender sent me an American Vintage 257 Strat like last year, so there's no like actual feelings like I would have been entitled to be involved in the Tone Master Pro launch or anything like that at all. Like, I don't have any sort of feeling of like being snubbed in that way, if that makes sense. I just got I was checking through my emails today because I emailed PRS to see if I could get my hands on an MT100 amp, because I thought that was interesting. I found back in my inbox there that they had said they would send me a Silver Sky SE to review, and obviously that never happened. I bought 3 of those in the end to review those, and that's not kind of coloured my opinion when I did a PRS DGT SE review. I was again super skeptical to start with, because I thought that's kind of expensive for what it is, and then bought one from Peach Guitars, and kind of my opinion changed. I was like, well, actually that's a really good guitar at any price point, and that's kind of how these things kind of work. So it's not like a case like, oh, this company didn't involve me, so I'm going to actively try and undermine a thing, if that makes sense. It's more just like genuine skepticism when I see like really aggressive marketing. I guess kind of in a contrarian way, I kind of think, well, there must be something going on here, if that makes sense.
In this case, with the Fender Tone Master Pro, I'd seen, you know, the leak stuff and some of what was being written, and I was kind of skeptical. Like, I was skeptical about the Strymon Iridium, like I was skeptical about the Friedman IRX, like I was skeptical about the Boss GT1000 Core, like I was skeptical about the HX Stomp XL. You know, there's lots of things where I sort of raise an eyebrow. The Quad Cortex is a really good example of this as well, because it sort of is the latest example, or the one before the latest example, where it's already quite a congested marketplace and space for consumers, and you bring along the Quad Cortex. It's the latest, greatest, most powerful. Again, for me, the whole idea with buying the Quad Cortex was to kind of put it up against other modelers in a way, and kind of think, well, what is its actual context here? That's a lot of words talking about stuff. But anyway, that was the whole point. I'd seen that the Fender Tone Master Pro stuff had leaked, done a couple of videos on it. Then I saw the launch videos and sort of the claims that were being made, and I thought, okay. And then I saw, you know, they were getting sent to people like Mary Spender, Matthew Scott, people that maybe have never even played a modeler before, and words were getting thrown around like kind of fun and this sort of stuff. And I thought, well, in the context of actual modeling, which I'm of course quite heavily involved in, I think it'd be good to compare this stuff to what's currently out there, compare it to products that I have or have used, you know, whether it's a Line 6 Helix, whether it's a Fractal Audio piece of gear, which I have an involvement with Fractal Audio, not Fractal, but G66, who distribute for them. So that's why I generally don't these days do kind of like an idea of like an unbiased sort of review for Fractal stuff on the channel anymore, because it's a bit like, well, that's difficult to do if you're making videos for them every week. But I have bought a Fractal FM3 and I've got an FM9 X3 on loan from them to make videos with. With Line 6, I've been sent HX Stomps and HX Stomp XL, the HX1. There's been occasional bits of paid work that I've done, like 2 or 3, right? Not anything huge, but bits and pieces. But if you've seen recently, like the HX1 videos that I've done with that, I'm still kind of skeptical with the stuff. They offered me money to do that kind of demo, and I kind of declined because I thought I'd rather try and stay on the more impartial side and try and do things that are in the interest of a viewer in this regard. You know, whether that is comparing it to some Strymon pieces of gear, or whether that is saying, as an HX Stomp owner, I'm not sure the HX1 is something I would necessarily go out and buy straight away, and trying to find a reason for it to exist. It's a little bit more difficult to do, I think, if you've agreed to take money from the company in that way. I have skepticism in general when a product comes out and they're saying this is the most professional, this is the best sounding piece of gear, whatever, because we know that there's a really established kind of set of gear that's already on the market that's being toured around the world. We've got Kempers, we've got Axifexes and FM9s, we've got the Line 6 stuff, which I think generally still people kind of put a tier below, which is one of the reasons that I kind of champion it as a bit of an underdog. And we have the Quad Cortex, which for me it's a company that I don't really love how things have gone. I was on the pre-order, I had the unit, and it was kind of a little bit disappointing in a way to see how things took this long to get to the point where you have a desktop editor, a looper, and soon it looks like the plugins will be ported across. But I have to say, even in that context, the Tone Master Pro, I felt like had less going on for it than the Quad Cortex did. So the Quad Cortex, what I really liked about it was this really kind of nice form factor. Stick it in a gig bag and stuff. One thing I really didn't like about it was the power supply. But, you know, that was a touchscreen situation. Firmware updates to the cloud, getting presets and stuff off the cloud kind of worked once the Wi-Fi worked. The Tone Master Pro, you know, it had a weird little button on the back that you had to press to do a firmware update. The cloud stuff wasn't really there, as far as I could tell yet. But more than that, there didn't seem to be, to me, for me personally, the tones that I was looking for within that unit. Or the magic bullet that I think each new modeler sort of presents itself as. So the idea is, I think that as people that are using modeling gear and have used it for years, we are used to the idea that there are certain things that you probably need or likely need to do on most modelers to get good results, and whether that is, you know, doing things to kind of tame fizz if you're using lots of high gain, whether that's, you know, low cuts, high cuts. The thing that I thought might happen once I'd actually kind of bought the Tone Master Pro and was going to gig it live was that it might be a bit of a magic bullet where they actually have solved some of these issues. For me, I didn't find it was the case, and I found it was a little bit limited in terms of models and stuff, which is obviously granted that was likely to be the case as it's a new product. Not that many Fender models in it, and they didn't have the normal channels. It was only like the vibrato channel. So from that point of view, like even in terms of Fender modeling, I've seen people saying that like no one can model a Fender amp like Fender do. Well, I think, to be honest with you, Fractal have shown for many years that they can, and they have far greater array of Fender models. Line 6 have a greater array of Fender models, as well as having normal and vibrato channels. And when I did the side-by-side comparison, which is, to be honest, where you can actually, I think, get a good sense for this stuff, because it really does place it in the context of other modelers, I didn't find that the Fender stuff necessarily outshone even the Helix stuff. There's a video on that, does it sound better than the Line 6 Helix, that I did, and to be honest, there were some bits that I thought like the Deluxe Reverb had more bass and the Vox had more bass, but in general the tone was kind of similar, and then like the Friedman models, it was way more scooped. So yeah, for me, I buy quite a lot of gear for this channel. Examples where this wasn't the case, like the Strymon Iridium, I actually kind of found it really fun and interesting to do loads of videos with that thing. The Friedman IRX, more recently I bought that with some amount of skepticism, like isn't this just, you know, like a valve tube preamp within a pedal? We've seen this done loads of times. I wanted to see whether that spoke to me or not. It turned out to be quite a purchase that I'm quite glad I made. Thinking about the Quad Cortex, I bought a few of those because I wanted to kind of keep up to date with how things were progressing once I'd sold one. And I did hundreds of videos with the Quad Cortex, all of them unsponsored. It's not a thing where if a video or a company aren't willing to do whatever, that I'm not going to cover the product. It's more that the product has to interest me, like the Hotone Ampero Stomp. I've kind of done a load of videos with that, and I want to get back to it once they've kind of brought along the update to make it so that I could maybe use that thing live. With Line 6, I've done thousands of videos specifically because that product speaks to me the most. And it happens that people ask for presets when I do use a product. First of all, when I started uploading kind of Helix videos, people were saying, could I try that? Same with fractal videos. Anytime I've used a modeler, people ask for those presets. It's the same with the Fender Tone Master Pro. I put those up for people to check out. I think they're on the cloud. You can probably still find them if you want them, but I didn't find the tones in the Tone Master Pro that I was particularly looking for, and it's quite an expensive product at the moment. In the future, maybe there'll be a reason to have one again, but I did have to buy a new car, and for me, the Tone Master Pro was the piece of gear that is in my room that honestly I didn't really feel like was contributing much, and I would have rather had a Quad Cortex in my room if I was given the choice, is kind of the feeling that I had. And when I had a Quad Cortex, I didn't used to turn it on that much either, but it at least did have the capture stuff. It had a fairly unique form factor. So there's not to say that there's not great stuff about the Fender Tone Master Pro. I think there are some really cool things, and I think it's the most plug-in looking user interface that we've seen yet. But like Leon Todd said in his video, he was sent one by Fender. It sort of feels like it might be the last of this generation of modelers. Is it the first of the next generation of modelers? I don't really feel like it is, because it doesn't do kind of that much different to a Quad Cortex, was kind of my feeling on that. But yeah, so let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you loved your Tone Master Pro, I've had comments from a couple of people that are really into it. I think there are some other people that have maybe had a similar experience to me. I saw one on eBay and the guy had said, you know, I bought this kind of thinking that I might try it out, thinking I wanted this sort of thing, but I actually found that what I already had kind of did the job perfectly well. And that was kind of the feeling that I imagined might be the case as someone who has a lot of other modelers. And I think I tried to get that across in the videos in general anyway, but for me, yeah, it's not something as well. People, when I end up using a product, sometimes see it as inherently a recommendation, and that's again why I try to be like upfront and say, well, actually, this might be the thing that I would prefer in some cases, or you know, why I was comparing it to a Quad Cortex, where I'm not even necessarily recommending a Quad Cortex either, but between those two devices, I feel like the Quad Cortex was more where I would have headed, and I had more wow moments with it. That's a lot of talking, a lot of rambling, but I just wanted to kind of put that out there. It wasn't supposed to be like a deliberately trashing a product or, you know, saying that it's not useful for anyone, but I did want to put it in context fairly with other units on the market, other units that I've got experience with, and just show how it sounds potentially. I did my best to build some tones with it that I would be happy using. I think some of them got there, but in general, I felt like it didn't have the kind of magic bulletness that it kind of promised. And for that reason, yeah, I didn't want to necessarily keep that up around when I could sell it and use that money to spend on other stuff like the Friedman IRX. And there's a Universal Audio Lion pedal that I've ordered, which should be here soon. So I think just to keep the idea of other stuff fresh. That's kind of that video. I could have continued using the Tone Master Pro and built loads more presets for it and done hundreds of videos, but it just didn't really speak to me in a way that made me want to do that. like some other things have. And for the price point, there's things like the Hotone Ampero Stomp that really impresses me. There's things like the HX Stomp, which really impresses me. There's the GT1000 Core, which really impresses me. There's the FM3, which really impresses me. And even the Quad Cortex impressed me more than the Tone Master Pro, I think. So that is just what it is. Sorry if you really love a Tone Master Pro. I know there are people that watch this channel that got one and dig it. And that's also great. But for me, I decided to use that money for something else.